staying actually in the north of the county in one way, but of course we're going universal in another way, because on this programme in the last couple of years we have featured the heartrending stories of the women who were known as the Magdalene women. These were women who became pregnant out of wedlock in this country over many decades, and they were sent in most cases by their families into these so-called Magdalene laundries. Ger Boland comes from Prosperous, and along with Corkman Stephen O'Riordan, they put together a marvellous film last year, basically chronicling the story and the harrowing, heartbreaking stories of these women. Indeed, on this programme, a woman called Margaret in her 70s told her life story of how she was confined to one of these homes, and indeed how her baby was taken away from her, and so on. Heartbreaking stuff indeed. Ger Boland, good morning.
How's it going? Are you well?
I'm not too bad, and you're welcome back on the programme. The film did, I have to say, achieved a huge amount in terms of bringing focus on the heartbreaking stories of these Magdalene women as they're known.
Yeah, it's brought a lot of attention towards the whole issue, and you know, for people that didn't know anything about it, that had seen the film, had come up to me and just couldn't believe, I suppose, what they seen, what they heard, and ultimately what happened to these women.
Yeah.
I don't want to really go on about what kind of happened to these women. I think most people have the story more or less, but basically what I'd like to say, Clem, is there's been a few developments within the whole Magdalene campaign, and just one issue I just want to start off by saying is, a few months ago we received a Magdalene laundry writing in book, and it was from the 1980s.
Now, could I just hold you there for a second, because I want to explain the Magdalene laundries were named, by the way, after Mary Magdalene, who was deemed, of course, to be a harlot and a woman who had sinned. Essentially, she was a prostitute, and the very name that was attributed to these laundries and the branding of these women as sinful or in that area, well, I don't need to say any more. And I, as a child, remember the Magdalene laundry van driving around my area, picking up the laundry every week and bringing it back. It was mainly sheets from beds that were sent away and stuff like that. And not little did we know, we just knew nothing at all of the background behind these laundries. You're on with us today, Gerard, as you say, you have found or received a copybook written in the 80s. Tell us more.
That's right. I was going to touch back, sorry, just on what you said there, like the women that were sinful, or in short, I suppose, prostitutes, or that type is kind of being pushed around. But in short, I've yet to meet a Magdalene woman that had a baby out of wedlock, and I think that point has been said on numerous occasions, but I think it's far from the truth in some situations that I've come across. But with the book, yeah, we received this book a few months ago in the post, and basically it's from 1980, Magdalene Laundry, and we're presuming it's from Dublin. With there's a list of names and individuals and companies that gave in their laundry over a 6-month period, and the majority of the businesses would be from a Dublin area. And we just calculated on an average week that the religious order were making £900 a week, and so on top of that, then, as people may know, the Magdalene women weren't getting paid for any of the work, or I suppose any of the slavery, if you want to use a better word. As you know, some of them were as young as 12 doing this work, and they weren't getting paid for it. So the book just outlines, really, it's kind of clear case, or a clear insight into how the laundries were working, and I think it's the first kind of piece of hard evidence that there is out there of how the laundries were working and operating, and how much money they were actually receiving.
It was double exploitation when you consider that in the case of this laundry, and we won't mention the names of the companies here because there's nothing to suggest that they knew for a moment what was going on behind the scenes, but you had the exploitation of these women on the double. One, unpaid labour as such, although the religious order might say that had taken these women in and was supporting them, feeding them and clothing them, but in this case, as you say, £900 a week in the case of this laundry back in the 80s was enormous money. But the reason I say double exploitation is that the very same religious orders were also being funded by the Department of Health for every woman they had in their care.
That's right. From 1979 to 1994, the Eastern Health Board were funding, so say back in 1979 it started off at £3 per week per person, and by 94 then it had risen to £18 per week per person. So I mean, it's just another piece of information that's out there that I don't think many people would know. And you know, again, to say at the age of 12 you were working and slaving away in a Magdalene laundry while these religious orders were making a huge amount of money. I mean, it's a terrible thing to think that no justice or no form of recognition has come upon these women. Like, these women would have left the Magdalene laundries. They would have been uneducated. They would have been illiterate, mentally, physically deflated. Which I suppose some of the Magdalene women that I've met, this has led them on to depression, some attempting suicide, some going into alcoholism, and just their lives has been completely shattered by the whole situation.
Anybody who heard Margaret tell her story in this programme couldn't be moved, but we should point out in fairness here, Ger, it wasn't the religious orders who threw these women out of their homes or forced them from their towns. It was their families and society's attitude that branded many of these women. Of course, not all of them, as you say, were women who were pregnant out of wedlock. Many of them came from broken families where maybe a mother died and the father couldn't cope or the parents couldn't cope, and abject poverty and so on. There was a multiplicity of reasons. I know people who were put into these for all those reasons. And it's only fair to point out that if the religious orders weren't there, these women would have been abandoned to whatever device, because the state certainly wasn't stepping in to pick up the situation.
Well, I think some of the women that we've met were promised actually better education, and their Magdalene laundries fell under the term of a training education centre. So from their point of view, they've been completely left aside, and it was Magdalene laundry's fault in that situation, whereby, say, Kathleen Legge, for instance, from Tipperary, her school reports were sent out, her education reports were sent out to the family members, and the family members thought, oh, my daughter is getting a good education here, where in fact she was actually getting no education. She was being made work. So I mean, there is a lot of different, I suppose, issues or different complex stories, but I don't think people know the full extent as to what has happened. For instance, like when we showed the film there 3 weeks ago in the West Grove Hotel, and just, it's very hard to say on the phone in short, but just people were not expecting what they seen and what they heard. And for me to go through it now on the phone, it's very hard. But I would urge people to kind of get out there and support the campaign. We have a website that has all the information regarding our campaign, and it's www.MagdaleneSurvivorsTogether.com. And when you go onto that webpage, then there's a Facebook link, and basically over the next 3 weeks, we have a campaign running, and we're releasing a charity single. And the idea behind the charity single is to raise funds to get a national monument built in respect to all Magdalene women, both living and deceased. The charity single has been sang by 10 international, I suppose, singing sensations is a good way of putting it. I can't reveal who's singing now, but I would urge anybody that has been affected or feels strongly about the whole situation to go onto the website, go onto Facebook. And I know some people, they're not up to date maybe with Facebook or the websites or things like that. I'd urge you just to ask a family member, a brother, a sister, anybody, just to get onto the website, MagdaleneSurvivorsTogether.com, and there's a link there to the Facebook campaign.
All right. Okay, Jared, I'll have to hold you up there because we're up at 10 o'clock on news. Thank you very much for telling us about that book. It certainly does give an insight in terms of the amount of money being made, and this was just one laundry in Dublin. And when I go through, by the way, the list of companies that are listed in this book, there are government departments listed in there, semi-state bodies, religious orders, ordinary businesses and that, but it was obviously huge business going into this particular one, and these laundries were situated around the country. Yes, I agree 100% with you. Justice is needed for all these women, and what happened to them, and the story needs to be chronicled, and they need to be given a closure. Ger Boland, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Cheers, thanks.
And let us know when you've more on that single and what's going on. The website, again, if you want to hear more, is MagdaleneSurvivorsTogether.com. Ger Boland from Prosperous and Stephen O'Riordan, who's from Cork, put that film together, and it's still being shown. By the way, where do you hope to show it next?
We're hoping to get it on TV. We're just one step away from finalising and getting the documentary on TV, so fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for that, and as soon as that, if that happens, let us know, alright?
Will do.
Thanks a lot, Ger Boland, for that. Okay, we'll crack on to 10 o'clock news. We have